Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dennae Handford, and my wife, Dennae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur. On the podcast with us today is Nikolai Ray. Nikolai, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Dan. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hi, Nikolai. We are certainly looking forward to talking with you, and we want you to get us started by just kind of giving us a little bit of background about your life as an entrepreneur and talk to us about where your focus is right now.
Sure, Dennae. Actually, my life as an entrepreneur probably started quite a long time ago. I'm 34 right now. So I was born in Canada. I grew up in Los Angeles. And already at a pretty young age, when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old, walking around the streets of downtown LA, which at the end of the 1980s was a pretty rough area. I was already talking about, eventually one day building a company that would have its name on top of skyscrapers like the ones that I'd see in downtown LA, and that would help homeless people, help feed them, help find them shelter and all this stuff. Obviously, as you grow older and life kind of, you go from childhood to adulthood, you realize that, you can't just be living like Mother Teresa or like a monk and on top of some mountain. So eventually, my life and my path brought me to something similar, but in a more capitalistic way. So after my hockey career, which started when I was 16, playing 4 years of junior hockey, and ended at 22 as a professional hockey player playing in the minor leagues, I immediately just jumped right into entrepreneurship without really knowing that that's what I was doing. I just didn't want to have a job, and I kind of wanted to keep on with the athlete life. So I started my first business in a gym as I was playing professional hockey, and that became something quite big. And then, to make a long story short, and obviously we can talk more about it later, but 12 years later, I've founded 4 companies already. I've exited 3 successfully. And I'm 12 years in as the CEO of startup companies now.
So before we dive into some of your tough decisions, when you start these companies, do you start them with the exit in mind?
No, I don't. Actually, I've never started with the exit in mind, or actually exiting was never the exit I had in mind. I always go into companies believing that I'm going to build them up and be in them for the rest of my life. And then, life happens and business happens and various things come into play. And that's kind of what brought me to exit those companies. The first companies were in the health and fitness industry, and the latest companies that I'm in are in real estate investing, especially in multifamily real estate investing.
So let's dive into some of these tough decisions that you've had to make along your career as an entrepreneur. And I want us to start off with one I call the sore thumb tough decision. It's a tough decision that you had to make, and you spent a lot of time in that tough decision, but it ended up not having a very good outcome due to that decision that you made and some of the lessons that you learned through that tough decision.
Well, I'd say the one that really comes to mind was when I was in my early 20s. With the first company that I started and founded at 22, we were pretty big within a couple of years. We had over 70 employees, pretty big revenue, and we were expanding internationally. And the decision was do I keep on continue expanding at this crazy growth rate? Only being 24 years old and a very young CEO who never really planned all this out, or do I try and kind of cover my bases and maybe stay smaller for a while and just make sure everything's really solid? And I just came to the decision to say, you know what, I have one life to live. A shark has to keep on advancing in order to keep on living, and I kind of felt that way at that time. So I was like, let's go with growth. And I ended up selling half of my business off to an investor in order to help fuel that growth. And then everything just went to hell after that. I mean, taking on the wrong business partner, giving up too much control of my business, trying to expand too rapidly and not being able to manage that growth, ended up actually killing the business and having to go bankrupt at the age of 25. So from pretty much zero at 22 to millions at 24 to zero again at 25.
So it happened that quickly.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't seem quickly at the time. It actually happened over probably about a year. And the real agony was probably over about 6 to 7 months, because I had to actually let go each of my employees one by one. And as I did that, I had to take on their workload, because obviously we still had contracts, we still had clients, what had happened was that we were building these new centers, and one of our biggest centers had delayed construction times, which cost us a lot of money in expenses construction wise, and also cost us a lot of money on salary and payroll, because we had hired a whole bunch of specialized staff who were paid to practically do nothing because we had no center that was open and we couldn't get new clients. So I mean, the business, which was really quite sad at the time, was actually doing very well. It was the whole growth aspect of it that killed the actual existing business.
So looking back, what would you have done, or what could you have done to maybe change that outcome?
Probably nothing, quite honestly. I mean, I think everyone has their ideas, with regards to hindsight. But I think, the entrepreneur that I am today and the CEO that I am today, which is at a fairly high level internationally, is probably due, in fact, to that journey that I went through. And I mean, not to say that people didn't get hurt in that I didn't get hurt and that it wasn't emotionally charged. But I mean, what could I have really done? The honest truth about it was that at that age, managing that size of a company and that growth, I just probably was not fit for that, and I don't see anything that really could have helped me be fit for that, other than, just maybe not being an entrepreneur and being maybe a number 2 or a number 3. So yeah, there are plenty of things that we could have done differently, but at that moment we didn't know that.
So I think you've touched on something that's really important, because an entrepreneur, I think the very nature of the person, they want to expand and they want to grow and they want to constantly, be doing new things. So what have you learned about growth and expansion, and how do you conduct that now as opposed to maybe what you did, 12 years ago?
Well, I'd say that one of the things that I learned about growth, the most important thing that I learned about growth and expansion, is that it's probably the hardest thing to manage in entrepreneurship. Everyone thinks that starting a business is hard, and like the first 5 years and this and that. We hear about this in the media, but I mean, for me at least, I don't find starting a business very hard. Getting to that first $1 million in revenue is actually quite easy, but it's that whole growth process after that gets pretty difficult, because as long as it's you and maybe a couple of employees, it's pretty easy to manage. But once you as a CEO or as an entrepreneur have to start, hiring managers who are managing other people, you really have to start to learn how to manage delegating, and not just, giving away tasks, but actually truly delegating tasks, building up an organization, scaling your processes, which means that you actually have to have processes in place, which is usually something that entrepreneurs don't have. So I'd say that's probably the biggest lesson. And once you're able to do that and realize that it's no longer a one-man show, or you're better off having a really strong organization, that's your job as a CEO, that's when you really start to hit your stride.
So let's talk about a tough decision that you've had to face as an entrepreneur that had a really good and positive outcome. So kind of changing them a little bit here, and some of those lessons that you learned through that one.
Absolutely. Well, my third business that I started, which was the business that really got me full-time into real estate investing, was a real estate investment advisory firm. So kind of like an investment bank. So like a Goldman Sachs, but for multifamily apartment building investing. And I founded that company, and after about 3.5 years, we were really doing well. We were hitting about $100 million in transactions annually with a very small team. We were very lean and mean. And it was a business that, had my name in the business, kind of like a law firm. Like if anyone watches Suits, obviously at that moment I was extremely inspired by the show. So we had our names on the company name, our family names. And, we got to the point where me and my business partner, we were 50-50 co-founders, just did not see eye to eye. He was very happy with the growth that we had, with where we were. And he was like, that's good for me. That's enough. We can just kind of stay like this. And I'll go surf in Costa Rica in January and take the whole month of June and July off with my family. And, I'm happy with what we've built. And I'm like, well, it's not even 5% of what I thought we were going to build. So, and the business was, very profitable. I was making a lot of money, had a really nice lifestyle. Life was great. A lot of acclamations for the success that we had, but it just was not what I wanted to do. And it was just, I felt like it was stopping me from reaching my potential. So I had to come to a very hard decision to actually, leave that business, sell my shares, and then kind of start over new with a new idea, a similar idea, but fairly new and innovative. And then just, go from go from zero again, which can be a very scary thing because at that moment I actually had 3 young children. My eldest was probably, I guess, about 3 or 4 years old. So, entrepreneurship is pretty easy when you don't have kids and you don't have too many responsibilities and you're living at home with your parents. But, when you have a wife and a house and 3 young children to take care of, you don't look at risk and entrepreneurship the same way. So.
No, I can definitely attest to that. We have 4 little ones ourselves.
And it worked out because, now, a year and a half, 2 years later, I have a multi-million-dollar business that is on a growth course to probably hit eventually. I think within probably the next 5 to 10 years, we probably should be able to actually IPO this business either on the New York Stock Exchange or on the NASDAQ.
So when you pivoted and opened that new entity, did you have a partner in that one?
No, that's another thing. I learned a lot about partnerships. Obviously, my first business kind of going down the drain due to a poor partnership. And my third one, the one I told you about earlier, also ended up having a pretty awful end to the partnership. So, I realized that I've got to be in charge and that, it's cool to have partners and it's good to have partners because I think you can go faster by yourself, but you can go further with others. And I think that's really interesting and important to understand as an entrepreneur. But I think there also needs to be one cook in the kitchen. There needs to be one general on the battlefield, one emperor in the empire. And therefore, the way I structure it now is, yes, I'm willing to bring on management. I'm willing to give shares of my company. But the bottom line is that, the puck stops with me. And I'm the general, I'm the emperor. And I think it's for the best ultimately.
So, Nikolai, talk a little bit about the strategies that you use when you are facing a difficult choice.
I'd say the strategies that I use is I'm a very introspective person. So my father was half Bengali from the northeast of India. So I grew up with, Buddhism and meditation and all this stuff that's supposedly very esoteric in North America, but it's actually quite, normal and natural in Asia. So I'd say the first thing is actually to take space. I'm really not afraid to actually leave the office, to not even go into the office some days and just, go and sit by a river. I live in Quebec City, so I spend probably half my year here in Quebec City, the rest of the half, in the US and elsewhere in Canada. So I'll just, find a body of water, or I'll find somewhere, maybe a cafe or a coffee shop and actually sometimes just sit, just trying to think and just trying to relax and meditate and breathe and kind of let my body deal with everything. And that's the way I kind of find inspiration. And then I'm able to start analyzing the whole situation in the third person, pull my emotions out of it, pull myself out of it, analyze what I'm doing, analyze what's going on, and then arrive at a couple decisions from there. And then the second part of that is I have what I call my advisory board around me, which is very informal. It's not formal at all. And then I'll explain the situation to them and explain the solutions that I believe I have, just to kind of, get their feedback and kind of see their reactions. I usually always end up having the right answer, but just to have that feedback loop and just, having one of those people say, you already know the answer, Nick, so go for it. So that helps a lot.
All right, we're going to take a quick break to hear from one of our sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Nikolai about some of his favorites as it relates to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com. Okay, we are back with Nikolai Ray, and we are going through a series of quick questions and answers that we like to call the trifecta. And Nikolai, I want you to start us off by talking to us about your favorite technology that you use in business that helps make your life easier every day as an entrepreneur.
I'd say my favorite technology is definitely my smartphone. So my Samsung Galaxy, really saves me. It also allows me to to travel. I'm very nomadic, coming from musician and artistic parents. So I like to move around a lot, and obviously I have to move around a lot with my company MREX being everywhere in North America and growing. So I'd say my cell phone allows me to do that, allows me to work from everywhere, even allows me to go on vacation in Cancun, Mexico with my wife for a couple of days, get away from work, get away from the kids, and still manage to answer a few emails and make sure everything's running smoothly. So.
And what is a favorite quote that you've heard that's helped you as an entrepreneur?
A favorite quote I'd say is, that's a good one. I'd say that my favorite quote would be probably, a Steve Jobs quote, just think different. That's probably the whole idea behind my life and my entire entrepreneurial career so far.
And what about a book that you have read, either about business or decision making, that you would recommend?
I'd say that the whole books on Stoicism, from Epictetus to various other Stoic philosophers, are very helpful. And if we go to more like concrete stuff, a lot of the latest books from Gary Vaynerchuk are really hands-on and really interesting. Not that I agree with everything that he has to say and does, but it really gets you thinking and gets you realizing what needs to be done in this new type of economy that we're living in.
And so what's the next thing for you right now on your vision or dream board?
The next thing for me is actually just, bringing to fruition this company that I've started, which is called MREX, for the Multifamily Real Estate Exchange. So we're expanding across the U.S. in 2019. We actually are holding many events, real estate investment events. We're holding the Multifamily Real Estate Week in 10 different cities in the U.S. in 2019. So I'm really focused on that short-term growth and expansion, all the meanwhile preparing the end goal and the long-term vision, and keeping both of those two communicating properly. And
how can the listeners reach out to you if they want to follow you more, get some more information on what you're currently doing, and just try to contact you?
Well, if you're into real estate and you're a multifamily investor, I'd say go to the MREX's website. So that's www.mrex.co. So MREX for Multifamily Real Estate Exchange. And I'm extremely active on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So just search for Nikolai Ray. There aren't many Nikolai Rays in the world, so I'm pretty easy to find.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule to be with us today on the podcast, and look forward to following you as you continue to grow as an entrepreneur, and look forward to having you on a future episode as well.
Thank you very much, Dan. And today it was a pleasure being with you.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.